Hello, and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a gentleman who I had the pleasure of meeting soon after I first moved to the Dallas area. This man is a pastor of the Ford Life Church. He is known as the from scratch preacher, a man of integrity, a godly man. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege, my honor to introduce to you Pastor Rico Holland. Thank you, sir, for being with me this evening.
What's going on, Joe? Man, it's
What's
good
going
to
on?
connect with you. I know it's been over a decade since we met and sat down at a Starbucks, I believe, at North Park Mall
Right,
over
it's
there
been a
in
while. It's been a
Dallas. So it's
while.
been a while, man. It's been a
Yeah.
while, but man, I appreciate you for having me. I know that the Lord is going to do some great things through the work that you're doing here, and this is an exciting time, man. You could have had anybody on tonight, but you chose me, so you're stuck with me for tonight.
All right, and I can live with that because like I said, as I was coming up with, and I tell people this as I was coming up with my my list of potential people to be on. You were one of the first people that I thought about. Because again, I'm not here to just put random people on. I'm here to put people on that I think are gonna have a journey and a story to tell. We all have a story to tell, but they're going to be able to impact and say some words that might be of encouragement and empowerment to people. And I know that you're one of those brothers who's going to do just that. You do it every week, every day, for that matter. So I know you got something in you to share. So
Yes,
I'm
sir.
pleased to have you on board with me this night tonight.
Yes,
So.
sir.
But before we get started, I do want to give you a few moments to just kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Tell them a little bit about Pastor Rico Holland.
Well, what is there to say, man? I'm a down to earth brother. Love the Lord. Married to a wonderful wife, Keisha. I have two great sons, Kendall and Caleb, and have a daughter-in-law now. My oldest son recently married back in October of 2022. And I'm a grandfather now, and I'm also expecting a second grandchild through that union with my oldest son, Kendall. My youngest son, Caleb, he's living the bachelor life right now and just kind of figuring some things out. He recently graduated from UTA here, and now he's on the path of doing some cybersecurity work. But in my current situation, I'm the pastor of Forward Life Church here in Arlington, Texas. We have a wonderful, a small congregation, but a wonderful group of people, man, who are on fire for Jesus. And we do a lot of things in terms of going out into the community, trying to touch lives and make a difference. It's been a great journey. We planted that church about 4 years ago, and it's progressing along. Um, in my in my current life, it's just a wonderful thing to do that and encourage people, pour into people. I love social media content creation. That's a passion that I have, and we do a lot of that through our ministry. But it's just a wonderful time, man, to be a part of our ministry as well as life in general for all of us, man. We're living in some blessed days, and I just think that if we really embrace who we are and where we are, we'll see the fruit of what God has for us. So that's where I am right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's wonderful, and congrats on the second coming of grandchildren. And of,
It's not out to the public yet. I haven't put
oh,
it out there yet. But my daughter-in-law, she did share it, and they're hoping for a boy this time. And
mhm.
whatever I say, I just want a healthy child. So
Right, right. Awesome, awesome, man. That's great work, and what you're doing with your church. Just watching that journey across social media, and just you were very open and transparent with that. Everything from you and your wife in there scrubbing floors, painting walls, demolition, all that good stuff. I mean, that's the real deal. That just lets you know that you had your full heart into it. Fully engaged, and to make it happen. And of course, I've caught clips of your sermons, and you can tell that you have a on fire congregation, and again, the from scratch preacher is on fire as well, so doing this thing. So awesome work, man, awesome work. So
thank you.
as with any journey that we go on in life, you know, you can't really tell the full context of the story without starting from the beginning. And
Right.
so that's where we're going to start tonight. And so, what I would like for you to do, if you would, take us back to your childhood and just share with the audience a little bit about what was it like for you growing up in the household, in the environment that you grew up in. You know, what was that like? Fond memories that you have from that, as well as if there were any particular challenges that come to mind that you had to face and eventually overcome. You can feel free to share that as well. So just kind of give us the backdrop of how it all began with you.
Sure. Well, I'm the youngest child of six children. My father is a pastor. He's been in ministry for well over 50 some odd years. My mother, she passed away when I was 14, and I'll touch on that later. But she was a teacher in the church. I grew up, my brother played piano. We sang, we did some of everything regarding the church. But uh, being the youngest of the group, I got an opportunity to just kind of be spoiled, man. You know, I ran the house pretty much. I got away with a lot of things. Uh, you know, everybody kind of gravitated towards me and treated me like I was just the best thing in the house. You know, of course, my mom did. My dad, you know, he was a little different, but you know, having three older brothers, I always felt like that was an advantage to me because, you know, hey, if I get into it with somebody, I got three guys I can pick to come
There
and
you
help
go.
whoop you, you know. But you know, being the youngest, there was always like this distance in terms of my connection socially with my three older brothers because you know they were in middle school and stuff, and in high school while I was, you know, in elementary school. So there's a gap there. I think my oldest brother is 12 years older than me, then 11 and 10. And so they were stair step kids. But that created for me, I gravitated more towards my sisters because they were always around, especially my sister who's closest to me in age. We kind of built a bond and built a connection. And that connection still is thriving today because they're a part of founding members of my church here and very faithful, very helpful in what we do. They protect me as well and have my back in a lot of ways. And my sister, who's closest to me in age, man, she and I used to get out there and fight in the neighborhoods, and she would fight boys, she would fight girls. She didn't care, you know. And so, you know, it was fun for me being the youngest, and I got a chance to kind of see things from the youngest perspective. Um, and recently, my brother, who's the third of that stair step group, he passed away back in 2021, and I was preaching on the road in Memphis, and when he passed, and I still had to go through with that ministry assignment. And afterwards, you know, I just broke down there in front of the congregation that I was ministering to, a good preacher friend of mine, Pastor Terrence Pryor, there in Memphis area. There, he encouraged me, built me up, and he was like, "Listen, man, you've poured into us, and I couldn't even tell what you were going through." Uh, but after that, one of the biggest things I had to deal with was learning how to. I had to eulogize my brother. It was something that I never had to do
Mm.
before, you know. And in eulogizing him, everyone else who spoke about him got to speak. My dad spoke from the perspective of a father-son relationship. My two older brothers spoke from the perspective of brothers who are, you know, close and connected to one another, you know. But for me, I got to speak about his life from the younger brother perspective, which gave me a whole different perspective. And being the youngest in a family, I didn't have a middle child syndrome like some people say they have. Uh, Being the youngest, man, was just one of those privileged things. that I got to enjoy, and I still enjoy to a certain extent. Because now it's funny, because me being the youngest all of those years, now I'm kind of the leader in the family. You know, when people come to we need to make a family decision, or they come to you about something, it doesn't matter that you're the younger brother, because you walk with the Lord, you walk with Christ, you have the anointing, you have the authority on your life. And so they respect that aspect of my life, man. And so
Hmm.
it's kind of a different dynamic, being that I was the youngest growing up and having the memories that I had, man. We had great summers. You know, I kind of grew up in Louisiana. Some of the Louisiana projects in the area that I grew up in the city that I grew up in, and but I didn't even know what poverty was until I got older, right? Matter of fact, growing up in a predominantly black area, going to predominantly black schools and being around black people all the time, the only white people I saw were teachers, you know. And so I didn't know what poverty was. I didn't know that we were poor. I didn't know the conditions that we lived in. I didn't know any difference of it until I actually got older and got exposed to other aspects of life. But at the same time, I got good memories out of it. I think being in the conditions that I kind of grew up in kind of molded me, shaped me, developed me, helped me to see life from a different perspective, taught me how to have a work ethic, taught me how to appreciate the things that God is doing in your life now. Because when you've went through different dynamics in life, and you've had different experiences that were kind of on a destitute type of level, whatever God does in your life now, you appreciate it and you recognize it, and you realize that, you know, he's brought me so far. He's brought me a mighty long way, and I'm just appreciative, man. So, you know, my upbringing was great, um, with the family I have, the people I have around me at that time, and my development, my formative years, and everything. It was just a wonderful experience in that regard.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Good stuff with that. And like you said, I think you speak to a lot of individuals who are around our age group. You know, where we say, you know, when you grow up, where money was thin and things like that, where you didn't feel like you were in poverty, but a lot of that had to do with the community of family,
Right.
and just loving on one another, to where you didn't focus on those things because you were too busy. Just, you know, again, loving on one another, looking out for one another, being there for one another. So a little always felt like a lot,
Exactly.
just because of that harmonious segment, that, you know, that was that environment that existed amongst the family unit, that I wish we had a lot more of that still today. We've gotten a little bit away from that, but and especially because those times are of adversity, you know, and
Right.
so you're able to deal with the adversity a whole lot better when everybody's on the same page and we're all united together, and we, you know, we're in it no matter what. And so if it's just a little bit here, food wise or whatever, we're gonna all make do, and nobody's gonna go bed hungry. Nobody's gonna go without. You know, we're gonna all
Correct.
just be there for one another. So
I,
that's good
I think
stuff.
it's funny that you mentioned that we don't have those times now. I think that the more affluent we became as a community, I think there were certain qualities of trainings and disciplines and um, you know, values that we kind of got away from,
Hmm.
because we felt like, hey, I don't have to do that for. I want to spoil my child. You know, I want to do for my child what wasn't done for me. And I walked through that for a season in my life as well, of trying to make up for my children the things that I didn't get, right? But one thing you can't make up for is the work ethic and the hunger that comes along with the conditions that you grew up in, because it teaches you how to go out there and get it, how
Hmm.
to remain hungry, how to never just be satisfied and complacent with where you are. I always want to grow. I always want to be in pursuit of something. Not saying necessarily that I'm just going to exhaust myself pursuing riches or you know, cloud or what have you, because I read
Hmm.
in Proverbs 23 where it says that we shouldn't be overworking ourselves for riches. We shouldn't be putting a lot of um, effort out there, unnecessary effort out there, straining ourselves, trying to become something. But at the same time, Proverbs also tells us that a person who is slack and not diligent in their effort will go hungry, will go without bread, will not be able to stand before great people with their gifts. So I think that there's a delicate balance that we need to find in that.
Hmm.
I think that oftentimes we only focus on one aspect of it or the other when we need to meet somewhere in the middle. Should I be lazy? No. Should I overwork myself and exhaust myself trying to do this and trying to get this and gain that? No. But I do need to find a delicate balance where, I have the work ethic, I have the drive, I have the desire, but I also know when to rest. But I think that there's the young people that's coming along these days, man. We've made it so easy for them, and we've made it look easy. And so when they see us, they see our life, they see how we go about our business, and we do it effortlessly sometimes to them. But in reality, we know the tough things that we have to go
Hmm.
through. We know what we have to do to get out of the bed, to go and take care of our families, take care of our responsibilities, be good stewards. I think that we really need to get back to that, man, because this generation that's coming up behind me, and I'm not bashing a generation, but I'm just being honest. I just don't see a lot of that hunger. I don't see a lot of humility. I don't see a lot of desire for. I see a desire for greater things, but I don't see the desire for the necessary steps that it will take to get there. So that I'm glad you brought that up.
Right, because it's like we got kind of get stuck in that age of entitlement,
Yes, sir.
the age of ease, where everything just happens, that they don't really understand the true meaning of what struggle is. Struggle for
Right.
them is the internet's not working.
Right.
know,
First world problems, right?
right, right. Why is the internet acting up? I can't get on my phone. That kind of stuff. Not,
Exactly.
will the lights be cut off tomorrow, or is there something to eat in the house, or do we have heat in this winter in the wintertime, or air in the summertime? Things like that. So you're absolutely
Right.
right with that. So, um, one other thing I would like to ask you before we move forward, of course, in your role now as a pastor, I'm curious to know, um, at did your calling, if you will, to pastoring, did that start in your childhood, or would that be something that would arise later in life?
Man, I'm glad you asked me that because my answer to that question is an emphatic no. And I have good reasons why. To be honest with you, I know for a fact that Jesus is real because I was not looking to be in ministry. I wasn't interested in ministry. The only thing I ever saw in ministry was struggle. Only thing I ever saw in ministry were people who sometimes were unfair in their dealings, with my father or other ministers. And then the flip side of that, another side of ministry I saw were ministers who weren't fair and who didn't do the right thing. And so I know Jesus is real because he called me. I was not interested in ministry at all. I always am amazed by people who say, I was called to ministry when I was 8 and I was preaching when I was 5 and all. No, man, I was playing with GI Joe. I was playing with Transformers and He Man. I was not studying the Bible. Okay, and so my encounter, man, it's interesting that you bring it up. My encounter happened at a critical moment in my life. I, went off to school after I graduated high school. I went off to college and didn't have a good first year, man. I flunked out of college, found myself on academic probation, and couldn't get in the military. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't repivot my life, And so I found myself in a situation one night walking and it's storming outside and I'm walking and I just felt lost, man. I felt hopeless. I felt as if my life was going nowhere. I didn't have any particular options, on the table, no prospects, nothing going on, man. And at that moment, I began to weep and I began to cry out to the Lord because I always knew of the Lord. I can remember there were times when I was hanging out with my buddies in high school, getting high and drinking. And one particular night, Joe, I'll tell you, man, this tripped me out. I'm in the back of my friend's Cutlass riding down the street, and I look in the sky, and it's just a clear sky, man, full moon outside, one of the most beautiful moons I ever saw in my life. And I heard the voice of the Lord tell me, "Have your fun now, but you gonna get saved." And he,
Mm.
when I'm drunk, man, I'm high, right? And been smoking weed, been drinking. We finna go chase some girls, and the Lord was like, "You're not going to always be like this. This isn't going to be your life forever." And I heard him clear as day. And fast forward, I had my encounter with him, and that really kind of pivoted my life, man. I was sharing with my godson and my youngest son the other day about when I stopped doing a lot of the things that they're still kind of just now embracing. I tell
Hmm.
them all the time, like the old folk used to tell me, uh, what you picked up, I put down a long time ago, right?
Right, right.
And so I can remember telling him, I said, man, when I was 22, man, I was done. I was focused on, I was married at that time, uh, had our first son. And man, I was done, man. I wasn't trying to get involved with a lot of that. And they were like, well, I got living to do. I said, okay, but I hope that one day you realize what I realized and that you have a real encounter with the Lord like I had, because that encounter totally changed my perspective. Now, have I done everything right? No. I always say it's not what you do um, necessarily doing, it's not what you do right, it is what you do with intent. And
Hmm.
oftentimes I haven't done everything right, but my intent has always been, since I've been walking with the Lord, to do the right thing. And you can't please everybody, but you can just try to do right by people. And so, in doing right by people, sometimes people feel like it just wasn't enough. And I'm okay with that. I've learned as I've grown and matured to be okay with people not liking my decisions or not liking how I go about my business in terms of as a believer and even as a pastor. I'm okay with it. But at the end of the day, man, that encounter changed my life. I was not looking to be in ministry, man. I wanted to be something else other than a preacher, but I'm here.
Amen, amen. And I want to first, of course, thank you for your transparency in sharing that, because all of our, pastors or other spiritual leaders would not be willing to share what they used to do. Because like you just talked about earlier, you talked about, people say, yeah, since I came out the womb, I knew the Lord, and and I've always walked upright, and I've always done this, and I've always done that, and I think people need to know, or they tend to forget, that even in your role as a pastor, that yeah, the standard of excellence, the expectations of you may be heightened, but you're still human.
Right.
You still go through stuff like everybody else do. You still have challenges. You still have things that you have to fight through and overcome, just like anybody else. And so, that's why I titled the show for us today. When the called fall. Because sometimes
Right.
those who are called, we stumble too.
Right. I didn't
And
know the show was
you know,
called When the
yeah,
Call Fall. I had
yeah,
no idea, man.
yeah. That's what I
Did
called
you
it. When the
know, man? I
call
was going.
fall.
Did you know I was going to tell you my business like
I didn't
that?
know. I didn't know. But I know at the end of the day we're all human beings, and and like you said, I like how you pointed out about the change comes in your intent. You don't,
Hmm.
I think it's a combination of the intent and just how it makes you feel when you do know that you've done something that's been out of order, that's not been pleasing to God. Back in the day, if you did something that wasn't pleasing to God, you just kind of whatever, you kind of brush it off. Now
Right.
when God is in you, when that Holy Spirit is in you, now you feel convicted. It's like,
Right. Right. A
you
conviction.
knew better. I was dead wrong for that. Instantly.
Right.
I had no business saying that, doing that, thinking that. Lord, forgive me for that one. And that's a sign of growth when it starts to bother you when sin is upon you, and
Right.
so. one thing I asked you real quick before we transition. As you know, again, accepted that calling and giving your life to Christ and getting into ministry, how hard was it for those around you who knew you from back when? Did they did more people tend to accept or receive that change that was coming in you, or did people try to pressure you to, oh, you ain't, you're not all holy yet, we know you still like to do this, that, other? Did you feel that pull, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, man, because I had a very interesting experience in my transition. Of course, so I'm from Louisiana, and initially, as I was, walking down this path and embracing my calling, it didn't really start out as a calling for me. It started out as a relationship interest in the Lord. And so when I was in Louisiana, um, as I was walking down that path, I was just embracing the journey of being a believer,
Mm-hmm.
learning scripture, reading my Bible, learning how to pray, learning how to have an interest in spiritual disciplines at the time. And so as I transitioned, one thing that happened is I found myself, and it's kind of this is kind of it's kind of things are kind of coming full circle now, but I found myself kind of pulling away from a lot of the old friends, and the reason I was doing it because not everybody was feeling that way or coming at me that way, trying to pull me back. But there was a few saying, "Man, I know you still a playboy. I know you still like to do this. Man, I'm gonna get you back in it and all that kind of stuff." And so I pulled away, and I ended up moving out here to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved out here to Texas, one of the best things that happened to me is that I met my wife here, and she belonged to a particular church where, as we transitioned into our relationship, she introduced me to this church. And at that church, I received the baptism of the Holy Spirit and began to grow spiritually even more. So I found myself around people who did pray. I found myself around people who were trying to do the right things. Not perfect people, again, but people who were trying to do the right things. And so I learned how to do the right things and how to grow spiritually through that experience. And now things are full circle. Now that I'm in ministry, some of the same people who were pulling at me then, trying to get me back into the game or what have you, are now really respecting my ministry. Actually, I married one of the brothers. I officiated his wedding. He and his wife, one of my boys, who was trying to get me back in it. Now he tried to get himself together, and I officiated his wedding a few years ago. Everything is full circle. There's a place. One thing I've learned, Joe, is that there's a place for everyone in a community. We have to have all types of people in a community. There's a place for the saint. There's a place for the sinner, in which all of us are sinners. There's a place for all types of people. And what I've learned in my journey, especially, man, in the past decade, is that my place as a minister is amongst those who are broken. It's amongst those who need healing. It's amongst those who are trying to find the right path. And even if they're not trying to find the right path, if they respect me as a minister of the gospel, if they respect me as a man of God, and they still want me in their life in some kind of way, that I owe it to the Lord and I owe it to that person to find a way, a happy medium, if you will, for us to stay connected so that I can be maybe the only Bible that they ever read.
Mm-hmm.
The Apostle Paul says that we are living epistles. An epistle is a letter. And, the Bible in the New Testament has several epistles written by the apostles and everything. And if I'm an epistle, then that means that I'm the letter from the Lord to someone's life. And I have to be conscious of that, and I have to steward that well. And I can't get to the point where I totally pull out of things. And one of the things I struggled with early on is that I would pull away from people. so quickly and was so quick to drop people and so quick to distance myself from people. But the Lord has matured me. The Lord has helped me to understand that it's important to know that everybody's not on the same path as you. Everybody's growth track isn't the same. Everyone's maturity level isn't the same. So you have to learn to be patient. That's why in Galatians chapter 5, it talks about the works of the flesh, but it also talks about the fruit of the spirit. And one of the fruit of the spirit is simply patience. You know, you have to be patient. You have to understand that long suffering is a part of this. You have to offer and allow forbearance because people are people. But no matter what people are doing, no matter where they are, no matter what their lifestyle is, Jesus loves them. And I may be the only person in their life who can continue to show them Jesus, man. And so I've learned to handle those connections and stuff well and differently.
Awesome, awesome. That's good stuff, man. Uh, it's like every time you say something, I'm looking. It triggers something else I want to ask you. Just real quick too. What was your father's response when you let him know, Dad, I'm going to be a pastor? What was how did he what how did he receive that? And if is there anything that you remember that he said to you as his words of advice or wisdom to you as you were getting ready to embark on this journey, seeing his son walk in these same footsteps? What did he have to say to you?
Well, of course, he was elated, man. I'm the only out of all the children. Well, my sister, who's closer to me in age, she teaches the word much like my mom did. My other sister, my oldest sister, she's the oldest of us all. She leads worship and stuff like that. But I'm the only one who accepted the minister's call. And so, yeah, he was elated, man, and he's one of my biggest encouragers, one of my biggest supporters. He got me a Bible, and he signed it, and he's always getting sending me something or telling me some things that I need to read or some stuff I need to do, giving me some key scripture. You know, he and I talk about the word, and man, he feeds off of me sometimes now. You know, scripture tells us that older men are for wisdom, but the younger men are for war. And so that's what he used to always remind me of, man, when I was younger doing ministry. And I got to ask him now, well, what the middle aged man is for now,
Right.
because you can't, I ain't the younger dude anymore. So you got to come with something for the middle aged guy.
That's good. That's good, man. I'm sure that was a proud day for him.
Yes,
That's
sir.
awesome. That's awesome. So, as we move forward in your journey of life, of course, as you know, you live long enough. Not only will you go through a series of adversity, but there's going to come a moment when you hit some spots that are a little bit heavier than others, where the burden is at a level to where you're not even sure if you're going to make it through this particular situation. So, what I'd like to ask you at this point is tell me about a time that comes to mind where you found yourself in that position where you were saying to yourself, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to get through this one. This is a little bit heavy. This is more than what I feel like I can handle. What was that experience for you that comes to mind, and how did you navigate through it?
Well, you know, Joe, life happens fast, man, and I learned that early on. And I mentioned to you earlier about the passing of my mother. Uh, of course, I was the baby boy. I spent all of my uh, young childhood up into my early adolescence with my mom and my life. And one of the things that I don't know if I've ever shared this with anyone um, publicly, I've shared it with my wife before, is that the day that my mom died, I was out in the neighborhood playing basketball, doing what at the time, what 14-year-old would do, just hanging out. It was summertime, and out. You know how you get on the court or what have you, and people play what they used to call the dozens. You know, talking about bombers and all that kind of stuff. Well, guy said something about my mama, and of course, after I had talked about his mama, and and, and I said, "Hey, man, quit playing with me like that. My mama dead, right? Playing. I'm playing, right?" Uh, and he was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry, man. I didn't know that." Da, da, da. I said, "Nah, man, I'm just kidding." Well,
Wow.
I go home, and sure enough, man, when I got home, my mom was gone. She had a heat stroke and passed away in her sleep. And for the longest, man, I carried that. I carried that because I felt that I was responsible. I felt that I spoke that into my mom's life. Being a young kid and not really knowing, um, you know, how this happened. It just seemed like I guess maybe you could say uh, it was clairvoyant. I suppose would be the right word. It's just something that just happened, man. It was an unfortunate circumstance, and I don't really believe that the words I spoke caused my mom to have a heat stroke. Now that I'm older, but that's something that I carry with me for many years, and I've never shared that with anyone. And you asked me to go deep and share and open up. I've never shared that with anyone other than my wife about that, and that affected me for a long time, man. Because what ended up happening is I was living in one place, and all of a sudden my whole world was turned upside down. Not only did I lose my mother, but I lost my life as I knew it. It just changed, man. My dad ended up moving me to a whole nother place. I had to start a new school environment, new community environment. Uh, Things just happened, man. It was challenging, man. And shortly after that, I think my dad ended up meeting another woman, and he got married again. And I wasn't really ready for him to get married yet because I'm still trying to grieve, right?
Hmm.
And that dynamic with having being trying to integrate into a step family um, was a new dynamic for me. And of course, when you're the only leftover child from the previous marriage, then you kind of suffer the brunt of neglect to a certain extent because now my dad is trying to ingratiate himself to this new role and this new family dynamic that he has. And then my stepmother, she has her own way of doing things. And, and so I always felt during that process, man, that was one of the hardest times of my life. I can remember getting into it with my older brother. He and I got into a physical altercation, and I can remember going to the back of the house, man, after that altercation, thinking about my mom, thinking about where I am in terms of this new family dynamic, how I fit, thinking about how I feel neglected because here I am now, like I told you earlier, being the youngest in the family, but in this step model of family, I'm the older. And
Mm.
so I have people looking to me now, whereas I used to be the one looking up. Now I got to look down. I used to be the one who received what I wanted. Now I got to share. You right? So this whole dynamic changed on me and shifted on me. And I can remember, man, going to the back of the house and falling on the ground, man, and just weeping sorely because my whole life changed, man. And it just seems like nobody could identify with me. Nobody could console me. There was nobody who understood where I was coming from. And of course, I was the youngest, so I was the only one who was left in that particular situation with this new step family dynamic. All of my other siblings were older and out on their own. And so that was a time, man, in all honesty, losing my mom, seeing my dad change his family dynamic, changing cities, changing communities, changing schools, that I just didn't know as a young man how I was going to survive that. And if this thing was ever going to change, was I in a nightmare? Where am I in this? This thing happened so quickly, and life happened so fast. And what that taught me, Joe, is it taught me that you have to always, first of all, appreciate the people who are in your life now,
Hmm.
Don't take anyone for granted. Enjoy life now. Enjoy who's with you now. Enjoy the people who love you now, because life can happen quickly and they can be gone. And then, secondly, it taught me that I have to be able to adapt, because you could be in one situation in 1 minute, and within an instant, your whole life changes overnight. So I had the regret of what I said on that basketball court that day. I have the grief of losing a parent to deal with. I have the family dynamic change. I have the scenery and city change. And it was just an overwhelming experience, man. And to be honest with you, growing up in the black community back in those days, we didn't believe in counseling and stuff. We didn't really
Hmm.
subscribe to that kind of stuff. But I believe that, man, I could have used some counseling during that season. It was a tough adjustment, grades wise, school wise, just, I mean, socially, it was a difficult situation. And as a 14-year-old kid trying to navigate life, trying to figure life out, that was a time for me, man, that was just overwhelming and overbearing. But, and ultimately, I got through it, right? I'm here today, but there's still some residual effects that, every now and then will creep in your mind about how different your life would have been if my mom, would have lived, and if she was still around. And so, yeah, man, that was that for me.
Wow. Wow. Again, thank you for the transparency on that. You just saying that you've never even publicly spoke about it to that degree. So that's powerful,
No, not at all, man. Not at all.
and somebody's gonna be blessed by that. And I'm thankful that you were able to, uh, process it eventually. Because you made a good point in the sense that you said, back then, counseling and things of that nature, that wasn't just a thing we did. That was a taboo for us. That was for
Hmm.
crazy people. We don't do stuff
Right,
like that. Um,
right.
but I do want to build on that in the sense and saying, okay, taking into consideration that counseling was off the table, and I know you said you eventually got through. I'm curious, when we talk about the healing, because this is what that is that healing process. What was it that you recall that you can think about that eventually allowed you to turn the tables and begin to heal? And I want to emphasize heal and not forget, because I think sometimes people confuse the thought of, that you're supposed to have, over time, that you're supposed to just forget that it happened, or get over it.
Hmm.
I don't think you'll ever get over that, but you do learn over time how to process it, how to handle it a little bit better. So when you go back to that moment and you found yourself transitioning, getting a little bit better with it, accepting it a little bit better, what things were you doing? What was it? What did it take for you to do that? And is some of that what you did then? Is some of that what you still do now when you go through challenging times, in terms of it's time to heal, it's time to get through those difficult moments? How did you process that, and how do you process today when you're going through difficult times?
Well, I'll say this, man. One of the good things that came out of that whole experience for me was my dad, when he was trying to get used to his family dynamic, he realized there were some things that just wasn't going to jail right, right?
Hmm.
And so, one of the favors he did for me was he allowed me to connect with a godmother. And, I moved in with her and her family. And really, my godmother is my older cousin's wife, right? And so I'm with my older cousin and his family, but his wife became my godmother. And so, uh, one of the things, she was tough, man, and challenging, but she was fair. And what she taught me was, first of all, you're going to learn how to take the initiative in things. Don't wait until someone else does something and be reactive. You take the initiative of what needs to be done in your life. And
Hmm.
so it started with simple things, man, like cleaning the kitchen, fixing your bed, uh, making sure that you do your part to make sure that the household is running and that your life is going in the right direction. She taught me you can't change what other people do, but you can do your part and make sure that you're on point. And so those are the disciplines, man, that I learned as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. And so I stayed with her for about a year and a half before I was ready to deal with the transition. Because remember, I wasn't ready for that family dynamic
Right.
situation. So I stayed with them for a year and a half before I even transitioned into this new family dynamic. But those little disciplines, man, that she taught me, man. I can remember one time I didn't wash one dish right. It was one dish, Joe. One dish I didn't take care of, right? This woman comes home, gets off of work, sees that one dish, and you know what she did?
Mm.
She woke me up and took all the dishes
Oh.
out of the cabinet and said, I know these are clean, but I want you to model this one dish like these clean dishes. And I had to wash everything all over again. And
Wow.
I did that for a week until I got it right. And it was my turn to clean the whole. And I'm not talking about just dishes, man. We had to clean the kitchen, right? That means that you wash the dishes, you make sure the counters are clean, you make sure the floor is swept, you make sure the appliances are wiped down. These are disciplines and details that she taught me. And through this discipline and detail, it helped me to become a little bit more. It was kind of like catharsis for me. I found something else to focus on to distract me from what I was dealing with. And ultimately, that distraction became a discipline that I apply to my life daily today. So when I have struggles in my life today, I'm reminded of those foundational things, those simple things. It could be as something as simple as, Rico, you're not paying attention to the details.
Mm.
Pay attention to the details, man, and see how you can solve this problem. Pay attention to the details and see how you can get through this situation. And so she taught me discipline. She taught me the detail. But then also she would tell me, man, after she would correct me on something, she would tell me, come on in here, boy. You know I love you, right? Who loves you? Is what she would say, you know. And she would embrace me and hug me and say, I'm just trying to teach you how to live. One day, you may not ever get married. You may be a bachelor. You need to know how to take care of a house. You need to know how to wash your own clothes. You need to know how to fix yourself something to eat. You need to know these things. And so those disciplines, man, that she taught me helped me to get through that. And there was nothing that she wouldn't defend me on. If she felt that I was right, she would defend me, man. I can remember a situation happened at school and with a teacher, and she came up there and she got all the facts, got all the details, and she said, I know this child. I, I've been in this child's life. I've been teaching him. I've been training him. And I know he wouldn't do that. And she was right. She didn't just side with me because I was her godson. She knew what she taught me, and she knew what she was being told I had done didn't match up to what she knew about me. And so those things helped me to get through that season, man. It was a challenging season. Also, just being a part of a sports community. I played sports growing up and throughout high school. That helped me to get through that season. And it was a learning experience for me, but I thank everybody, whoever put up with me and whoever gave me an opportunity to be the person that I am today, man. So yeah, that helped me. Now she's going on to be with the Lord, man. And one of my struggles, Joe, I'll tell you this, man. One of my struggles is a lot of the people who were either mentors for me, huge supporters for me, who believed in me, are now gone. And so I find myself in a place now where I hold on and value the people who are still here because life can slip away so quickly. There's bishops who are no longer here who supported me as a young minister. There's overseers who are no longer here who supported me as a young minister. Pastors who are no longer here. There was, for some reason, the old generation just loved me.
Hmm.
But now they're gone, right? And so that's why I cherish the time with my dad. I cherish anybody who's in my life who values Rico Holland, man. I just cherish those people because life can happen so quickly.
That's beautiful, man. And I don't think that your godmother being present at that time was an accident. I love the speaking of the discipline. And like I said, it wasn't. It may have felt like a distraction initially, but it was really teaching you how to, again, in the early stages of how to deal with adversity. Your mom's passing was a moment of adversity for you. How do I strengthen myself to be able to withstand the hit? you know, and
Right,
and not
right.
get stuck in that moment, but be able to say, okay. And that was the other thing that you said, the details. Because
Yes, sir.
I'm a believer that when we go through the challenges of life, one of the things that I've learned as I've matured in my walk with Christ is that you start, you're going to have that initial reaction to the moment of adversity, that initial shock, because you're human. You're going to have that. But then when you pause for a moment, when you catch your breath and calm yourself down, it's there that you have to pay attention to the details, like you said, and say, okay, what am I supposed to glean from this? What am I supposed to draw from this experience? Even though it may have come out as a bad experience, what am I supposed to pull from this to apply to my life so that I can become stronger, become wiser, become more equipped to handle what is ahead for me, whether I know it's coming, whether I don't know it's coming, or whether it's just simply God preparing me to be able to come alongside someone who's going to be faced with a challenge, and He's just strengthening me and building me up to be able to pour into them at that appointed time. So all of what you spoke of, I felt like that was just God behind all of that, just
Oh yeah, without a
building you
doubt.
up, strengthening you up, equipping you, readying you, preparing you for just the work that you do today. I mean, it was the
Right,
early, but he had to use a traumatic event like your mother's passing as that
right.
catapult moment. It had to be something of that degree that hit, like I said at the beginning of the question, it had to hit a little different. This is not the norm that we go through. That's a unique hurt. Anybody who's ever lost a
Yes, sir.
parent, I lost my mom. That feels different. That it's different
Yes,
than even
sir.
other deaths. It hits
Yes, sir.
different. So I totally identify with that, and I appreciate again your transparency with that. But you're spot on with the details and the discipline. That's good stuff there, man. So um, if you had a chance to speak to younger Rico, um, maybe the before the saved Rico, before the call to ministry Rico, the Rico who felt like he had all the answers and knew everything. Um, as we all do, we think we know everything when we're younger. What would you say to him if you had a chance to talk to him and use all your life experiences up to this point, everything that's been poured into you? What would you say to him that you think would be beneficial for him to know and to be able to navigate life, as well as anybody else who might be listening to the podcast, when they're stuck and they're not really knowing how to handle stuff? What would be your words of wisdom that you would have to offer?
Well, I would tell that younger Rico that you have to slow down to speed up.
Hmm.
I think often when we're at a young age, we're in a hurry to become an adult. We're in a hurry to experience life and do all the things that we think life owes us, right? And so what I would tell that young brother is, man, slow down, uh, focus a lot on learning, become as sharp as you can, read as much as you can, grow as much as you can as an individual first. Don't try to be a person who's in a hurry to be this or be that, because at the end of the day, you can only be the person that you are. And if you jump into something too soon, you will end up being incomplete. And I think that it's important for you to become as whole as you are as an individual first, and know yourself, know your habits, know what can bring you up and what can bring you down, know what type of associations you need to have, know the type of person you want to be? What impact do you want to make on society? Don't just be a person who's just sucking up air and taking up oxygen. Have a plan for your life. Know what impact you want to make. Have some goals written out. Have measurable goals, right? You know, they talk about the SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, and whatever the other, or the R and the T is. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but you know it.
I know what you're
Uh,
talking about.
yeah, have some goals, man, and be real about those goals, and don't be afraid to tell people who you are and where you want to go and what you want to do with your life, and explore things. Slow down. You don't have to always have so much stuff taking up your time. Learn a new skill. Give yourself some time to develop that skill, to become a master at that skill. Be good at that skill before you move on to something else. Take life seriously, but all at the same time, enjoy what you can within reason, but know that you're here for a bigger purpose and you got other things to do with your life and your time. That's what I would tell that young brother, man, because I think that young brother right there, he didn't know what to do in certain situations. He didn't know how to approach certain things. But I believe he was amenable to learning. But if we don't have the systems in place, the people around us like we should or that we need, then we can be open to learning as much as we want. But we still need to have the right things steering us in the right direction. And so I would encourage that young brother, man, to do those things. Focus on life, slow down a little bit. Don't be so eager to become a man, right? Uh, Enjoy the young experience, learn as much as you can. Become a part of society, man. Join some organizations, get around people who are talking about ideas and not talking about people, you
Mm.
know. Just put yourself in position to be within an earshot of the right information so that you can, just that little degree of change can totally change your life and the trajectory of your life. So that's what I would share with that young brother.
Mm. Well said, man. Well said. That's all we can say on that. Well said. Very, very well put. Um, so before I let you go, we got to have part of the podcast here. We like to celebrate. We like to affirm. We like to acknowledge. So um, please share with us if there's anything exciting you got going on, big plans, projects, anything that's going on with your church um, that we need to hear about, need to know about. Please share that with us.
Yeah, yeah, man. Well, currently, man, we're in the process of securing our 501c3 status that's going to help us uh, be able to get more resources in and do some grant writing. We got some things on the horizon with some grants being written, working with some community organizations here. We're working with Pathfinders currently, which is a financial literacy organization for people who are either impoverished or are coming out of the system, the jail system, or veterans. So we're working with them. We're working with the Tarrant County Food Bank with helping to feed people out in the community. We're also looking to get some other grants in place that's going to help us to make an impact on people's lives. At the end of the day, man, if we're not making an impact on people's lives, then why do we exist? And so those are some good projects that we're working on. We got a back to school campaign that we're going to be working on with another organization here in the city called Pushing Healthy Lifestyles, which is an organization that promotes health and fitness. They have a backpack giveaway to the people in the Dallas area. So I'm going to be working with them. Our church is going to be working with them. And of course, man, I'm doing some more, trainings and things of that nature. I want to go ahead and conclude my first book, which will be Nowhere But Going Forward, is the name of the book. I plan on getting that taken care of and wrapped up so I can be much like you, my brother, and have a great podcast. So, man, those are some things that we're working on. The Lord has been good to us, and we're excited about it. And we're just going to keep on serving and finding ways to impact our community, man. At the end of the day, that's what matters.
That's beautiful, man. Love the work that you're doing in the community and in the church. So, if somebody is looking for a church home or would just like to fellowship with you at Forward Life Church, how do they connect and find you?
You can find us on social media platforms. We're on Facebook as Forward Life Church. We're on Instagram as Forward LC Texas. And we're on all other platforms. If you look up Forward Life Church and see a logo with an F with a backwards L, that's us. Also, we're here located in Arlington at 219 Billings Street, Suite 340, Arlington, Texas, 76010.
Awesome, awesome. Well, my brother, it has been a privilege and honor to have you aboard on the podcast this evening. I thank you so much
Thanks,
for
man.
taking time out of your
Pleasure's all
schedule.
mine,
I
my brother.
have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I'm certain that you, in the sharing of your journey, you have blessed somebody. Somebody's going to hear this podcast, and they're going to be blessed by your story. And I appreciate again your transparency in sharing that. It is definitely appreciated. And so, if you have had an opportunity to listen to our podcast and you've enjoyed what you've heard, please, of course, subscribe, like, share, comment, and just get that word out to everybody because we're trying to tell some powerful stories here on the podcast to encourage, to empower, to uplift people through our journeys, through our challenges of life, and overcoming that thing we call adversity. Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So, as is customary here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, please remember that this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is in your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. So, until next time, God bless, take care of yourself, and continue to tune in. Take care of yourselves.